every situation that there was a toxic culture, that was in the leader. They were the facilitators of that culture. They were the ones that tolerated. They were the ones that made exceptions. They were the ones that had low or loose standards.
Welcome to Confessions of a Vistage Chair. I'm your host, Ryan Hogan. We have real, behind-the-scenes conversations with Vistage Chairs who share honest stories and practical insights on leadership growth, peer advisory groups, and what actually happens in Vistage meetings. Let's pull back the curtain. I'm like so excited I didn't even realize that we might have been able to take this in like War College direction and all these others. So I'm excited for this conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on.
You're welcome, Ryan.
Let's start with this. Like your background just screams coach, and you've been a coach for so long. Is this like, where did this come from for you? Did you grow up and you're like, you know what, I want to coach people and help them achieve their, like, where did this all come from for you?
I think I got where I got from mostly just observation, which just informed making choices as a result of sometimes just being in the right place at the right time. So the more obvious one is that my father was a Vistage Chair for 25 years. And I was able to just observe the impact that coaching and chairing and those relationships had on him. And I was just always intrigued by how much he got out of his profession. And I think that was just a really important thing, is to realize that you can get so much out of your profession that involves just giving of yourself and your talents and your insights. So yeah, I think that was one thing. And then just always finding myself in situations where I was either a camp counselor, I was a water ski instructor, I was a snow ski instructor, I was an outward bound instructor. I just was always in the coaching, teaching realm. I was a field hockey coach in middle school for my daughter's 6th grade field hockey because nobody would step up and do it. And I have never seen a field hockey game. At the time I said yes to that. My family tells me that I would fall asleep with the field hockey, for dummies book on my chest. And I'll tell you one more thing about that because it's just funny. I only had time to learn in my first game offense. And so I only taught my team offense. And as a result, my field hockey team never let the ball go past the middle of the field.
Yep.
And so the defense never touched it. Or if they did, they kept it on the front end of the midway. And then I remember my first field hockey game, afterwards I got yelled by the goalie parents about the fact that their daughter didn't have a single shot on goal, and as a result was going to quit field hockey. And I don't know why I shared that with you. I don't know why it came up, but I've always just said yes to anything revolving coaching, whether I knew anything about it or not.
I love that. And I want to take us back. However, there's something that you just said there that's important, and I think also translates in the business of, like, you became a coach of a sports that you had no idea how that sport was even played. Do you feel that there were certain advantages that you gained as a part of, like, not knowing and going in and being able to look at things differently, or like, what was that experience like?
Well, I think this fits nicely into Vistage, is that I wanted to play with the idea that you don't need to be a subject matter expert to be a good Vistage chair. And I think that's what makes me a good Vistage chair is I'm actually not a subject matter expert in many things. And I wasn't at the time. I was really young. I was in my 30s when I became a chair. I've been chairing for 21 years. So I really didn't have a lot of expertise. So my idea, my side idea, was to not be a subject matter expert in field hockey, but apply the principles of leadership, culture, coaching to my field hockey team and actually just hire a field hockey expert. So I was given a $3,500 stipend to be the field hockey coach. And I just gave that money to a coach of a college field hockey team. I had her come, I gave her that money. I had her come and do a whole week of different exercises, drills, and then I wrote them all down. And then I just repeated them every single week. And then, but what I really did is focus on culture, leadership, all of those things that I learned as a Vistage chair, actually from our Vistage speakers. And what was a really cool side thing is I would check in with my group on which speaker and which culture, leadership, team, principles I was actually trying in the field hockey team. And I have like a whole record of all the different speakers and techniques I tried. And that field hockey team went from like 2-10 to I think we were 10-0 at the end of my time.
That's awesome. That was going to be one of my follow-up questions is like, how did the team do? So when you went in and you're focused on leadership, culture, and coaching. And when you think about culture, especially culture in sports, did you walk into that saying like, this is the culture that we're going to set? Did you observe what the culture already was and then like adapt some of that? Like, how did you think about culture, especially taking, I'm just going to say a losing team, not losers, just a losing team 2-10 to 10-0. Like, what did that look like from a culture standpoint?
Well, what was really interesting about that is and it's interesting, different Vistage speakers would say differently now. Like I've heard different approaches that, culture should come from the top, from the CEO. I've also heard the approach of, allow the ground, a ground game in developing the culture. So what I ended up doing is I just facilitated a conversation with the girls on the team. And I asked them to define the culture, like what they wanted to do. So they came up with a very awards oriented culture, a really celebratory culture. I just kind of blessed fun. We had a fun, like at any given moment, they came up with, I could just stop what we're doing and we could just do something just for fun, whether it's dance, whether it's whatever. So they kind of all generated these little sixth grade ideas, and I tried to organize them in our team culture. And it was maybe 5 things, if I remember.
And did you document them? Was this something like once you started to collect them, is it something that like, in the EOS world, it's like, how do you reinforce and constantly communicating and like coming up with vignettes and things like that? For you, did you document them or is it just something where you just kept repeating them?
Yeah, I think we didn't actually put them in a document, though. If I think back, I know I wrote of what they were in my Vistage update, what we agreed to. But I remember the symbols and the rituals that they had around some of their team awards and celebrations that they did. I do remember hearing a speaker that you have to have your culture has to be alive. It has to be visible. And I remember thinking about like, what are we going to do? And they came up with like a little kind of maybe even like like a magic wand type thing for who had like a magical moment in the game, or they came up with those symbols on their own. I haven't talked about this in probably since many years. It's probably been 10 years. So I don't remember everything, but I do remember that they came up with how they wanted to ritualize it and symbolize it and then bring it to life. And I just made sure it happened.
I love that because like so often I think companies, business leaders get lost in this like it's the words on the wall, and the opposite approach to that is like, well, integrity was on the words of Enron's wall, and people walk past those walls each day, and like your whole thing here is like, I maybe I wrote them down, maybe I didn't, but we didn't have to write them down because it sounds like it was just embraced by everybody.
We did not have to write them down. We knew what they were and we made sure that they happened at every practice or every game.
I'm actually going to take this back to my team. It almost sounds like great values, great culture is like something that I mean, obviously it has to be managed and driven and some of these other things, but like it doesn't have to be written. It's like it's the actions, it's the things that are already happening inside of the organization. It sounds like you were the facilitator, the like you architected how these pieces came together, but the other humans did the work. Like they lived it.
They did. And it was the consistency. You know, I think that's another thing. It was just the consistency to your words of the action. And I think there were moments, there was a moment of like spontaneous fun that was part. And there were times where the girls were like, spontaneous fun. I'm like, I really don't want to do spontaneous fun. Like, we're working on our offense, you know, and then you're like, no, like spontaneous fun. They want to do spontaneous fun. Okay, great. You know, and then put my agenda and ego aside.
Did this validate? Because it sounds like, you know, over the last 20 some years of being a Vistage Chair, you've heard many speakers, and it sounds like you've heard both the approach of, hey, the culture gets set by the top. And then, you know, you either hire to that culture or, you know, you hire or fire to that culture, whatever the case may be. It sounds like some of the other stuff that you've heard is like, no, the culture comes from boots on the ground, and then it's like facilitate. Did this experience like show you there is a right and a wrong way to this or validate that?
You know, I would say it was a great example that culture could be created from the people within. I mean, I really did discover that. And I think it was my lack of expertise that I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to kind of let them figure this out because I don't know, like, I don't know what kind of culture you want for a field hockey team. Right. So I think that was part of it. I still believe that the CEO um, voice around, you know, what we won't tolerate is important. Um, but I probably had that voice in there too. But my voice, I don't think felt as loud as their own voices. Um, if that makes any sense as I reflect back on it. And I still had our what I won't tolerate. But that wasn't the big part of our culture. It was what they wanted for their team.
If there's a company that's going through a turnaround situation or some sort of shakeup, and there's a new CEO, business leader that's coming in, like what's interesting is it sounds like you unlock something that had already existed. Like you didn't go home one night and write down the top three things and then take them to the team and say, hey, this is it. This is what's gonna happen. But your facilitation took them from 2 and 10 to 10 and 0. So I guess like if all that stuff existed, then like what did it take to like have that stuff come out? So if there's a CEO going into a turnaround situation and it's like what is like your one piece of advice for like being able to unlock some of this goodness?
You know, I think back to the captains of the team who were chosen by the team, not by the coach. Um, and I think that they were the true owners of the
Hmm.
culture. And I wonder, sometimes thinking of like the peer-to-peer mindset that we espouse in Vistage, is I wonder if the fact that those captains were their peers and were the champions of that created the momentum versus
Hmm.
just the authority figure, which is me. Um, so I would wonder, like, who are my cultural champions that are really going to help me as the leader do the heavy lift of the culture and to help me through them talk to uh, the members of the organization to find out, what does living our culture look like to you, and being able to pull that information out from others rather than just the CEO. I wonder, when it, because it was a couple of their peers that were the captains, and they're the ones that made sure it was kept alive way more than I did. I wonder if
Yeah.
there's something there.
Were they already the captains before you showed up, or was that a part of your process? Was, we're going to choose new, maybe not new, but we're going to make this a team effort to choose who the captains are that kind of lead us through this?
I don't remember exactly the process that we did for choosing the captains, but I do remember the team chose them. I didn't.
Looking at this from an accountability standpoint, the person at the top is overall accountable, like for the good, for the bad, for everything. Like that person is the one that's accountable. If there's a toxic culture and we get away from the accountability aspect and more into like what's driving that, like, is that, if there is a toxic culture or a losing culture, like, is that truly always going to be the person at the top, or because they're not facilitating, or could they just not be set up for success?
Well, I'm trying to sort of play out um, what I've noticed. Both of my kids played college sports, and in every situation that there was a toxic culture, that was in the leader.
Hmm.
They were the facilitators of that culture. They were the ones that tolerated. They were the ones that made exceptions. They were the ones that had low or loose standards. So if I were to just do my observations in the toxic cultures I've always seen that at the foot, at the feet of the leader themselves, always.
So even if it's like, when we think about toxic culture, like even if that individual at the very top is not toxic, by default there's something else going on, of like they are tolerating, like they may not be the driver of it, but they are tolerating that type of culture around them.
The standards or lack thereof, to me, facilitated the poor culture.
Hmm.
Standards or lack of clarity around the standards, or low standards or no standards, or moving standards. Yeah, there was always something that they weren't, as around explicit standards that they were not providing, that was damaging the culture, in my opinion.
And when you think about the actual enforcement of standards, is this and we can, like, whether it's coaching, I mean, I've been in the military for a while now. And so like screaming has been a prevalent tactic inside of military culture. But regardless of whether it's sports or business or military, when you think about the enforcement of standards, like what does that look like? Is that a someone's not upholding their standards or upholding the standards, therefore I scream? Is it they're not hoping, like, I guess, what are some ways that leaders can think through the actual enforcement of the standards that they set?
Well, I first of all, I think clarity is king. And it's going to be making sure that the standards are explicit, and they actually line up to the kind of culture that a business or a leader wants. So it starts there. I think if there is standards in which people can be really proud, I think that individuals themselves can help each other meet the standards. I really do. I do believe in peers, and I do know that as a chair, I can say something to my member, but it doesn't land as effectively as when the peer says it.
Yeah.
And so I do think there's something in that. How do you make the organization itself the holders of the standards? Like that would be my ideal. And it's like the holders of the standards, the holders of the commitment. It's not even like holding each other accountable. It's just that that's what everybody would want for obvious reasons. So, yeah, if I could design that,
Yeah.
probably that's what the field hockey team had. I mean, they did have
Yeah.
it at some level, those little sixth graders. So it's really thinking about, like, to your point, what you're helping me do is just think about, like, what are all the pieces that happen there so that I was not the one holding people accountable to that culture and that commitment that the team itself was doing it, even in sixth grade.
And is that something like, is your hypothesis, theory, validation thinking, if the right culture is set and it's consistently reinforced, there's a natural kind of like peer accountability that will be created from that environment? Or is this something that leaders, like the leaders, need to articulate of like, this is the organization, these are our standards, and we all have a part in that, not just holding ourselves to those standards, but holding each other accountable? Or is it something that just kind of goes unmentioned but naturally occurs?
It's a very good question. I don't know if I know the answer. I'm thinking through a toxic culture where the leader actually facilitated the toxic nature of the culture, but the team itself wanted to hold themselves to a different standard and did, despite the leader.
Interesting.
That was another example that just kind of popped up.
Yeah.
So I have seen strong champions, um, people with standards who have actually had the courage to say, well, we're going to make our own culture within this toxic individual. And they did. And they won uh, lacrosse championship as a result.
That's wild.
I know.
And
I
you've
should
talked,
write these all up. I've got tons of case studies now that you're making me think of them.
I'll GPT this and get us notes, and then you can write the case studies for it.
What is the
Um,
common denominator? I haven't come up with one yet.
um, this is super interesting. Like one theme that's coming up of this like kind of peer accountability. You talked about the captains. It's no secret that in the Navy, we call it the backbone of the Navy, and those are the chiefs. And so there's officers, and then there's enlisted. I start off as enlisted, and then eventually got a commissioning. Kind of between like the E6s and below, there's an enlisted rank called chiefs, chief, senior chief, master chief, and it's the backbone. They are the humans that get stuff done. Um, and one of the things that you've been talking about is like, it seems like there's like the leaders of the organization, and then there's the people that get work done. And one thing that you're kind of keying in on is like, there's a level in there that sounds like it's almost most critical. Is that true, I guess, is one of the questions. And two, like what does that look like? Like what is that middle management that's like the most critical key to upholding those standards?
Gosh, I don't know. I really can think through the scenarios where we have a toxic leader, though there were champions within the culture
Hmm.
that were determined for that culture to succeed and that team to just succeed despite the leadership. But I've also seen leaders do a really good job of providing the framework for expectations and commitments, and then leave it to those champions to bring it to life, to ritualize it, to keep it fun and consistent. So I mean, that's the one thing that 21 years and having been coaching someone or something since I was probably 14 has provided me with just a lot of different scenarios and probably not one silver bullet common denominator.
As you think through these champions, like is there something that can be identified? So if a business leader is looking around their organization, let's say it's, a 20 to 50 person organization, like what would be some of these like key, because it sounds like they are critically important for the culture. What are some like key attributes if a leader's like, I don't even know if I've got a champion? Like what does a champion look like in process or in practice?
I think for me, when I think back at the champions, those were those that got not they received some sort of followership within the teams or in the organization. They were respected, and they had great relationships with people. They were people that liked to step into the leadership role, and had a lot of courage to just like fight for the team or fight for the culture or fight for what was right. So I think like that was just one thing. There's just people that really want to lead people in the right direction, and they just do. And I don't know how those people get picked. I don't know exactly how they pick their followerships. I'm also how they get their followerships. I'm an EQ person, so I know the emotional intelligence kind of side of it as well. But I'm sort of, I would say to my leader, who are your people watching besides you? Who are they following? And who is that peer that people will actually allow to take that leadership mantle maybe every once in a while.
Hmm.
Um, and I just think about who over the years people have gravitated towards. And I wonder what it is about their charisma, but there are people that can bring people together for a common purpose and a common goal. And you know that from your time in the military, and you get used to that. And it just becomes a part of how you all operate. It's the way you all think. It's a collective thinking and understanding that you all have. And so you're all heading in the same direction.
Same, maybe not the right direction, but we are all heading in the same direction. I'll tell you that.
In the same
Uh,
direction. Yep.
what what is so relevant? What you talked about EQ. So whether it's like how important is EQ or the attribute of EQ in this?
Well, I think when I look at the 15 skills of emotional intelligence that we talk about, one of them is the self awareness skill. And there is no self mastery without self awareness. And self awareness is that skill where you kind of are constantly willing to go to the balcony and look down at yourself from a distance and say, am I proud of my actions? Do I like the way I'm showing up? Did I create a ripple effect of negativity on someone's life today, either on purpose or by mistake? And then what will I do the next day to correct that? And I really believe that leaders have that ability, that self awareness, that ability to make these micro connections, to shine the flashlight on the things they're proud of and the things they're not proud of. I just think it all starts there. And once you have that kind of bucket figured out, every day, I think, is a day where you can make micro decisions about how you want to show up. And that just over time, that just creates kind of a volume of influence and rapport and good decisions and good relationships and overall well-being. So that's got to be a formula that sits in people that can attract people to them, that can attract that followership. So I do believe EQ is in those people, those champions.
All right, quick break, friends. Do you find it impossible to hire and retain top sales talent? Or worse, are you paying insane recruiter fees who are all using outdated hiring processes? Yeah, I was too. At Hunt to Killer, we were spending hundreds of thousands on recruiter agency fees. And after I sold that company in 2025, I started Talent Harbor. And the whole vision here was to make sales recruiting accessible to small and medium sized businesses, because the organizations that can hire and retain world class people are the ones that ultimately win. Most organizations rely on things like ZipRecruiter or LinkedIn, and they get hundreds, if not thousands, of resumes. But we find that the best salespeople are already perfectly placed somewhere else. And that's why our approach is to go after them. And we do that through a business model called recruiting as a service. We do not charge commissions. We do not have success fees. We don't have contracts. We don't have long-term engagements. And we become an extension of your team as expert sales recruiters. If you're tired of the same old recruiters and want to actually grow your sales team, check us out at talentharbor.com. That's Talent Harbor, TALENTHARBOR.com. Let's get your next sales superstar hired.
When you think about someone, you talked a lot about the reflection aspect in self-awareness. When you're coaching leaders, and especially on this key idea of like self-awareness, is this something like, if someone's trying to improve their self-awareness, is this like, hey, at the end of each day, I want you to write down this and a little reflection? Is this like, hey, I want you to take 20 minutes each day and just think? Like, if someone's trying to be more self-aware, what are some suggestions that you have for them to be able to improve that one key component of EQ?
I think I'm trying to come up with 3 Ps off the top of my head because I like alliteration, but I think like little things like what was I proud of today in terms of
Hmm.
how I interfaced with somebody. Um, what was the ripple effect of my behavior today? And did I like that? Did I not like that? Am I not proud of that? So I love the idea of, you know, would I want the way I showed up during the day to be on a podcast?
Yeah.
To be seen by all. And is there anything that I said or did that I would not want on a podcast? I mean, something like that is sort of just a great frame. And I also like the idea of just progress. Like, what progress did I make today? And that could be very broad in a relationship, in prioritizing something I might not normally prioritize. So those are, I'm trying to get into a bunch of P's because then I get to play my alliteration game, but I just ran out of them.
I love it. Um, when you think about, so you said self-awareness, I don't have a deep a deep study in this, and so you talked about that there's kind of 15 key components of EQ. Maybe they're all equal in importance. Do you find that there's like 1, 2, 3 that are like, you got to master these before you can really start improving your EQ?
Well, I'm gonna say that I do believe that self-awareness is the first one, that you actually have to be aware. And the way I think of it when I talk about this, about emotional intelligence, I like the analogy. It's like 15 clubs in a golf bag.
Hmm.
There are
Yeah.
15 skills. And so emotional intelligence is just paying attention to how you're playing your game every day, and which skills are you really utilizing, and are those skills helping you meet your objectives? Are there certain skills that you're not utilizing well, and are you, moving away from your objectives? So I do like the game. And I think depending on analogy, and I think depending on what you're doing in a day, one or two skills might be more important. But it all depends on what the game board looks like. Par 5 versus par 3. You might need different ones. You might need less. You might need more. That type of thing. So it's not as easy to isolate. I do know there's lots of research, like working with multi-generational workforces, you got to have a lot of empathy and flexibility. So if that was the context that you gave me and you said, all right, what about in this context? Or what about when you play the multi-generational leader? What skills do you need? I say, well, empathy and flexibility and self-awareness. So depending on the context or the objective, I think you need different skills. And it's my job to know which skills I need to play in what situations.
Love it. On the golf front, par 5, par 3, it's always a 7-iron for me because that's the only club I can hit straight. I just either swing it harder or softer. Maybe I need to work on all this stuff. When you think about empathy, I hear a lot of people when they talk and think about empathy, and they're like, I can feel what they're feeling. I can sense what they're feeling. Like, is that empathy, is being able to feel what someone else is feeling? Like, what is empathy kind of holistically to you?
So for me, from my frame of EQ, I think of, there's a mode of empathy, which is, I think, more closely to what you're describing, is that people can feel and that they actually pick up somebody else's emotions and they mirror those more obviously or directly. And I think of EQ empathy as cognitive empathy.
Ooh.
And so it is a cognitive choice to recognize or appreciate or understand someone. That's all it is. So you technically do not have to feel. You don't have to have been through that situation. You just have to do any of those three things. So it's a very thoughtful process, and it's something any person can turn on. And in reality, all you have to do is say those words out loud. Like if I say to you, I want to understand your history more, well, then I'm going to do exactly what I just said I was going to do. I'm going to understand it. I appreciate that you picked me for this podcast. Well, I actually do appreciate it because I said it. Like if I just can articulate the word, what I actually say actually facilitates the actual behavior of understanding, recognition, and appreciation. So it's really easy. People overcomplicate life.
Do you think, you talked about like a switch turning it on, turning off? Like I don't know if this is a trick question or not, because I was trying to think of an answer to this question as well. Like, is there ever a time you keep it turned off? Like it is not the right time. Like what would that look like?
Well, I think there are times that someone might have a belief system that I don't have, and I don't want to have, so that I can choose to not understand them. I can choose it. And I think it's fine as long as you know you're choosing it and why you're choosing it to not want to understand. As long as you're making that choice, I'm going to allow people that freedom of choice. I'm going to choose not to understand this. But I believe it always comes with cost. Because you don't have to agree. You just have to understand. And in understanding, even with things I don't want to understand, I feel like I always glean something from it. So I actually joke when I say this to people that you can choose empathy or you can choose not to recognize, appreciate, or understand something. You can choose not to, but just know you're making the choice and do it from a thoughtful, rational place.
One of the most like powerful exercises that I ran at the Naval War College of all places was I was going through something called the SLDC. It was Stockdale Leadership Development Curriculum, and it was basically like this extra course where you got a whole bunch of like leadership development. We did you name it, we did the assessment. And one of the most powerful exercises that I did as part of that program that we worked on for an entire semester is that we would have to read some sort of like, call it a 20-page white paper. And then we would have to write some sort of response from 3 different perspectives. So, like for instance, like there was something about social media and the detrimental effects that it's having on society, and then you had to be like Elon Musk talking about it. Then you had to be a congressman talking about it, and then you had to be maybe a child talking about it and like how it's impacting them. And it just like that exercise, doing that 5 or 6 times over the semester, it just opened up my eyes that like I don't think enough humans are like actually putting themselves in other people's shoes to like understand their perspective. And that's simple stuff. Like there's stuff that's way more complex out there that I think we're shutting down. But anyhow, I love your response to that.
I think that's great. And I think, first of all, I think the military has some great frameworks. And around leadership and team and culture, I actually took my Vistage member to the Thayer Leadership Academy at West Point.
Nice.
Because I thought it was important to understand other frameworks, right? And understand, and also to get rid of, biases and perceptions you have about, the military being a leadership model of yelling. It's not exactly. That's a little bit overly simplified. But to your point, I love what you just shared, and that is the healthiest thing. And I think it's a really gold mine for anyone that might listen to this in the future, is that think about the value of the 3 perspective, right? That's so awesome because our brain is wired for the binary. So if you just did Elon and what was the other one? Like a
congressman.
Developing
policy.
Then you'd end up in this binary win-lose scenario, which is what we end up in all the time. So the 3 perspective exercise, if we all could apply the 3 perspective exercise to everything, think about how many binary arguments we wouldn't be able to have. And I'd be forced to understand. I'd be forced into empathy because I can't just have 1. I'd have to have 3, which would force me to understand the second. It would be such a great thing for our brain and critical thinking and society and conflict. I'd love that you said it. Go do something with that. Make it a thing.
I talk to my kids about this all the time because like we've lived all over the place for the last 20 years now. We currently live in LA. We were living in Seattle, and what's interesting is like every time we move to a new city, there's a lot of group think based upon like your location. And what I try and do is like good and evil. And when you think about evil, like there's not a lot of evil in this world. There's a lot of like misinterpretation. There's a lot of like different backgrounds, but like there's not a lot of people that like truly just want to do harm. And if that were the case, then crap, then like the US is split 50-50 evil and not evil, whichever, side you're on. And that's something that I've been talking to them a lot about is like, hey, remove yourself from this environment and just think about holistically. It's not that this environment's right or wrong. Yeah. It's just about like, stay in the lifeguard chair for a little bit of life so you can see kind of the entire horizon on this. Yeah, I don't know how we got down this path, but it's been fun.
Well, you can tell that I can tell that you use go to the lifeguard chair. So obviously you guys spent some time in California. So that's your analogy base. And mine was go to the balcony. And mine comes from having to sit in the balcony and at church and
Yep.
look down at the congregation. So
Yep.
that's funny.
I love it. Okay. All right. This has been an incredible conversation. I do want to just turn gears just ever so slightly on this with a couple final questions. Number one thing that we've realized is like there's a lot of Vistage Chairs that listen to this podcast, and they listen because of people like you that are influencers inside of the ecosystem and carry a tremendous amount of respect based upon where you've been, the success, tenure, everything like that. And what we found when we polled and asked is like they just want to know how. Like what do you, when you think about the success that you've had as a Vistage Chair, what are some of those kind of key ingredients that you've had? Because there's not many of you that have been doing this 20 plus years. What have been some of those keys to success? And congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see. What would I say? I go back to a little bit. I'll take it back to the field hockey conversation that we had, which is when I think about one of the things about our culture that made us so successful and flipped the script from a losing team to a winning team. It's the amount of fun we generated. We were constantly generating energy and fun. And I feel like, much to the chagrin of my Vistage members over 21 years, that fun is coming at them from all sides in unexpected places. And it came from this. My dad gave me this plaque, and it says, "I'm an adult, but not like a real adult."
Yeah.
And that has really been like part of my chairing practice. Yes, I can be an adult when I need to be an adult, but when they're with me for a day, I just need to lighten the load. And I will do just some crazy fun things that they would never expect. My last meeting, I bought them some cards, and they were for 5-year-olds. And it basically, and when you open it up, it says "You matter," then it's a little quote from a 5-year-old, and everything rhymes. And then I made them go around a room and read their "You matter" cards, but then they had to say it was from me, right? So it was like, so it just made me sound like the nicest person. And it was all in 5-year-old rhyme. And they were just rolling their eyes. But after a while, they just started to have fun with it. And then after a while, I'm like, okay, this isn't coming from me. This is coming from E10, or this is coming from Adam. And it just mixing it up, and just the spontaneity of the fun and the humor. And sometimes I just crash and burn on my crazy ideas, but it doesn't matter because they think it's funny and they have fun. And I really think that is something that I do that is not that I'm saying other chairs don't do it, but I know I'm over the top with fun, with spontaneity, and just surprises. I'm always like, practice random acts of good surprises. And I'm constantly doing that with them, surprising them into positive motion, getting them into a positive state of mind. And it always just facilitates great meetings and a great community and a great culture. So that's probably a long answer, but I really think that's one of my secret sauces.
I love it. And what's interesting is the theme of this podcast now is culture. Like, culture has come up almost in every single thing that we've talked about here. And it's interesting how like you just put a bow around this at the very end of like, hey, why do you think you've been so successful as a Vistage Chair? And it came right back to culture, which I just love the energy and the fun, just being silly and getting people out of their businesses and like starting to work together.
Yes.
It's great. Okay. So someone was just listening to this podcast and they just happen to be in your neck of the woods, and maybe they want to learn more about Vistage or more about you, what would be the best two-parter? I'll back up. Two-parter. Number one, what do you look for in your members? And then two, if someone's like, oh, that's me, how can they get a hold of you?
I really just look for people who, at the end of the day, want to realize that they made a difference in their families, in their communities, in their businesses, and that they can't figure out all the ways to do that alone. That our brains as humans work way better together than we would ever do individually. And the fact that you're allowing people to inspire your brain to innovate, to create, to ideate, with the idea being, I'm on this journey and I'm just getting better every day. And I want to do that journey with other people that are on the same journey that I'm on. Off the top of my head, that's where I'd go with that.
I love it. Now someone was just like, that's me. That's, you know what? Heather just basically, that was my resume. What's the best way or easiest way for that person to get a hold of you?
Probably LinkedIn.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah. LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Vistage Chair in Vermont. So maybe that's the other secret to my success, is that I'm the only one. I'm the only game in town. That's a whole nother thing.
that works
At this point in time. So maybe it is about culture.
Part culture. Well, I like that too. It's like it's choosing your markets. I mean, that's a part of like business research, like
exactly.
Be in the right market, and of course, like the culture. Heather, thank you so much. I realize it's late on your end, so I thank you so much for staying up and having an hour conversation and sharing. Just, I realize like we talked a lot about on this podcast, a lot about a sixth graders field hockey, but there were so many like lessons that came out of that like can be applied to any business. So I just wanted to thank you for the stories and sharing.
Well, thank you. I have no idea where that decided to come out in this podcast. I certainly wasn't planning on it. And just so you know, thank you. You actually have given, what you do is actually a gift to other people, is that you spend your time asking all about them. And that is one of the nicest ways to treat humans. So.
Thanks. I'm like blushing and I have cold sweats right now after you saying that, but I do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.